Welcome to The Explainer. I'm Salem.
And I'm Jassis.
We are jumping into a completely different kind of landscape today. Imagine, if you will, a sprawling biopunk Medina at night. We're talking a massive digital lake reflecting these brilliant digital stars. It is the absolute perfect setting to explore something truly fascinating. You know, a lot of times when people look at the jurisprudence of Islam, they kind of just see this huge disconnected list of do's and don'ts. But we're shifting that perspective today. We're looking at the ancient text to show you that they actually form this meticulously designed socio-economic architecture. And right at the structural center of that entire blueprint, it's Zakat, governed by the commands of Allah. So we're going to reconstruct this whole system from the ground up right here in our digital cityscape.
Okay, let's dive right into this macro view. If you picture the Kaaba enclosed in a massive, radiant, futuristic dome, it really captures exactly what we're talking about. Islam doesn't just function as a loose, random collection of independent laws. No way! It operates as a flawless, integrated building. Think about it. If you're just staring at one single brick, you're going to completely miss its purpose. But when you step back and observe the structural integrity of the entire dome, you realize that every single rule is literally load-bearing. Every command works in tandem to hold up the ceiling of society. But here's the thing. To understand a building of this magnitude, we can't just guess where the walls go. We absolutely need the original architectural blueprint.
Section 1. The Blueprint of Islam. So the crucial point here is that we need to know exactly how these foundational rules were constructed, understood, and crucially, preserved by the people who laid those very first bricks. Our sources highlight the Salsabil project in a highly specific epistemic foundation known as the Medina School. Or, if we look at the texts, Amal al-Hal al-Medina, that essentially translates to the continuous, living practice of the people of Medina. You can think of it as the ultimate historical quality control mechanism. It's this practical methodology that preserves and structures those original legal rulings, basically making sure they don't get distorted by individual interpretations over time. It's a rigorous, unbroken chain of practice, and that serves as the specific historical lens we're using to analyze the text today.
Section 2. The Architecture of Zakat.
All right, now that we've got our blueprint on our foundation, we can start moving up to those mid-level pillars. And there is one load-bearing pillar that absolutely defines the socioeconomic structure of this entire building. That is Zakat. This brilliantly illustrates a stark contrast set up by the sources between two totally opposing forces in this financial architecture. On one side, you have Zakat, which literally means purification and development. The text shows us that this system of active business and charity liberates the mind, builds social skills, and ensures that wealth is continuously circulating. And on the exact opposite side, we have riba, or usury. Riba is all about hoarding. It creates this toxic economic bloat that exploits the vulnerable and just freezes capital. The architecture of Islam is intentionally engineered to fight the stagnation of riba through the continuous living motion of zakat.
Section 3. The 4 categories of wealth. Now, what's really interesting here is how this engine actually runs in reality. We have to look at the micro-level building blocks. Picture our digital oasis again, surrounded by silver palm trees and glowing neon golden dates. This helps us visualize the exact practical applications. The system targets 4 specific categories of wealth, with a strict minimum threshold, which is called a nisab. First up, picture purses of glowing neon gold and silver coins. This represents money and currency. The historical threshold here is 20 dinars of gold or 200 dirhams of silver, and it's taxed at a 2.5% rate based on the intent of its financial value. Second, we have our neon harvest crops and fruits. The threshold here is 5 awusuk, which is roughly 729 liters, and that's due right on harvest day. Third, we've got livestock. Imagine some very cool camels, cows, and sheep, maybe even rocking some neon sunglasses. The thresholds are 5 camels, 30 cows, or 40 sheep, and that tax triggers the moment that minimum is met and the collector arrives. Finally, imagine holographic trade goods spinning in the air. These are evaluated based on those exact same gold and silver metrics. It's just a beautifully balanced matrix covering all the major economic engines.
But listen, compliance with this structure, it isn't treated as just a casual suggestion. The source texts contain an incredibly vivid warning for those who hoard their wealth, specifically when it comes to livestock. It says, "No owner of camels, cows, and sheep who does not give out their due zakah, except them coming on the day of judgment, butting him with their horns and trampling him with their hoofs." I mean, wow. The consequence is deeply severe because a hoarder is effectively pulling load-bearing bricks right out of the social structure. By freezing that capital, they are literally threatening to collapse the entire building on top of the most vulnerable members of society.
Yet, despite how serious hoarding is treated, the architectural design itself is remarkably merciful. When you look at how the crop assessment actually works in practice, an assessor, called a kharis, arrives to evaluate the harvest. But here's the kicker: they don't tax every single grain they see. The rules explicitly state that a portion is intentionally left entirely out of the calculation. This accounts for what the birds might eat, natural loss, or what the family immediately needs to consume. The exact final yield, minus this merciful buffer, is what actually dictates the tax. So you see, this isn't just cold, rigid math. It's a system meticulously designed with forgiveness, human reality, and nature right in mind.
Section 4. The 8 recipients. Let's move on and see how this builds out the rest of the structure. We've talked about the collection of wealth, so the foundation and the walls, but what happens to the capital once it's actually moving? Now we reach the distribution phase, which you can think of as the protective roof of this socioeconomic structure. It acts as a comprehensive social safety net explicitly defined into 8 unchangeable categories to completely prevent corruption. Let's walk through them. It starts with the most vulnerable, the poor, who have absolutely nothing. Then, the needy, who have some, but just not enough to suffice. It also funds the infrastructure itself, the Zakat administrators. It accounts for diplomacy and social cohesion under reconciling hearts. It actively funds human rights by freeing slaves. It bails out those crushed by circumstance, those in debt. It funds community defense and public works, in the cause of Allah. And finally, it catches those who fall through the cracks away from home, stranded travelers. Together, it forms a comprehensively engineered net designed to catch literally every vulnerable member of society.
So, what does this all mean? If there is one core insight you take away from our time in this digital Matina today, it's this. This legal framework, based on the Matina methodology, is absolutely not a call for casual charity. It is a highly calibrated economic engine. It is a system meticulously designed to force capital out of the hands of the few, prevent toxic hoarding, and pump that wealth continuously into the wider community. It keeps the financial blood of society circulating, ensuring the building stands strong for everyone inside of it.
Which leaves us with a totally fascinating thought to close on. We live in a modern world where economic bloat and wealth hoarding are massive global issues. Based on the blueprint we just unpacked, how would our modern capitalist structures look if they implemented a wealth tax architecture designed entirely around preventing hoarding and ensuring continuous circulation? Could this ancient blueprint actually hold the answers to our modern economic cracks? It's definitely something to think about. I'm Salem.
And I'm Jessa.
Thank you so much for joining us on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we will see you next time.